Stay tuned for this important tip.
From our garden to yours. It seems like every time there's a thunderstorm, my electricity goes off for a while. When it's off for a while, I worry that the food in my refrigerator could go bad. How long is too long? Luann Duncan, our Family and Consumer Sciences agent, can tell me all about keeping my food safe. Welcome, Luann.
Thank you.
Does your electricity go off sometimes,
Yes.
do you have problems in storms?
And it depends. You know, sometimes we've had history of it being off for a long period of time, for days in a row, and then we have times that it comes back on in an hour or two. And the best way to really think about it is whether or not, you don't know how long it's going to be off, unless, of course, it's a hurricane or a really bad storm, and then it'll probably be off for a while. The best thing to do is leave the doors closed. Leave your refrigerator door closed, leave your freezer door closed. And that's why we always have to have an emergency kit. And then from there you have to do a little bit of experimenting to try to find out if it's been off too long, if the food is going to be safe afterwards.
So really, when the refrigerator goes off, what temperature should it be?
Refrigerators should be around 40 degrees, and your refrigerator freezer should be around 32 degrees, and then if you have a deep freeze, it should be around 0. Now, depending on that, it's really important to have a thermometer in there, because you can go to 42 degrees and still keep food safe. You can keep food safe even at 45 degrees, it's just going to spoil more rapidly. So it's a good idea to have a thermometer in there on a regular basis. They do make thermometers that when it reaches a certain height, it'll stay there, kind of like an emergency to say, okay, it reached 50 degrees. So then, but those are expensive. So there are some other ways to try to find out. And one of them you have in your hand.
And this is a baggie with ice cubes.
Right. And you put ice cubes in your freezer, and obviously if they hold their shape, it's stayed frozen. And if they've melted and refrozen, you've known that. Or if they're still soft and just water, then you know that it thawed. Now that doesn't mean that everything in your freezer thawed, but it tells you that the power was out, because sometimes you might be away from home in a storm and the power went out and you didn't know it. So it's just an indicator. It doesn't mean that the food's safe or not safe. If it refroze, that could be critical, because you don't know how long it was thawed, how long it was off. We always say if you're in doubt, you throw it away. But it's an awful big expense to just throw away. So if the meat still has ice crystals in it, you can reheat it or refreeze it, and then you can also heat food if you don't think it got any warmer than 40 degrees, like the refrigerator temperature, and it's thawed. But if you don't know, throw it away. But if it was thawed and is 40 degrees, go ahead and cook it, and then you can refreeze it. People don't like the idea of cooking everything in their freezer, but that's sometimes what you have to do.
Sometimes when the hurricanes, that's what we all did. And
Right.
I know even this is a great idea, just because the ice cubes all melt, and it was a big mess in your
Right.
freezer too, because it all
Right.
becomes water.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about what foods we could eat that if we don't have electricity for a while.
Right.
Because there's always a possibility of storms, right?
Oh, definitely.
And I see you brought a whole selection of different types of foods.
Well, especially when we're not going to open our refrigerator or freezer door, what are we going to eat instead? If you have home canned goods, if they've been canned correctly, you can eat them right out of the jar. So I have had friends who love beets, and they'll just open up a can of beets and eat it right out of there. Of course, we like to heat that. If we don't have power to heat it, then what else can we eat? Anything that is canned commercially, you can open it and eat it. So it's not an issue of safety then, it's whether or not you like the taste or the flavor when it's cold. You want to make sure you have a balance of different foods, obviously, for nutrition. A big jar of peanut butter is always a good idea. Get a bigger one, have it on hand, because you can always put it on crackers, bread, whatever you have in your little emergency kit. But the canned meats are also something that you can eat.
Now, even when we talk about summer picnics, I see you come up with an idea about keeping foods cold, and that's probably pretty critical.
Yes, and everybody has a cooler or uses a cooler when they're going on a picnic. But the thing is, what happens with the food when it comes out? We want food to be at room temperature no more than 2 hours, but at a picnic or a big event, you usually have it out for a period of time. So buying 2-size pans and then putting the ice underneath to keep it cold, they sell very nice expensive containers as well that actually have the gel in them and you can freeze them. There's a variety of things to do. But if it's been outside, one of the concerns is that we say, oh, 2 to 4 hours. However, if you have put your food out for 6 hours, it just needs to be thrown away. And
you never know with
You
cookies.
just-
I mean,
yeah.
you do know you need to keep your cold foods cold.
yeah, you need to keep the cold foods cold, and to keep hot foods hot out at a picnic is a rough thing to do.
Well, Luann, we're out of
Yeah.
time, but
Okay.
you've given us some great advice
Okay.
about keeping their food safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Summertime means hot weather. Make sure you keep your food at the right temperatures.